Hello and welcome to another episode of The Word for Kids. I'm Jamie.
And I'm Josh.
And we're guiding you through the book of Matthew in a series of 20 episodes. Last time, we learned about Jesus going before the chief priest named Caiaphas and all of the Sanhedrin. They were looking for false witnesses to present false evidence against Jesus so that they could have him put to death. Two people did come forward with a lie, saying that Jesus claimed he would destroy the temple and raise it up in 3 days. Jesus kept silent in response to this, but the high priest said to him, "Tell us if you are the Messiah, the Son of God." Jesus said that he was, and also said, "From now on, you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One."
When he heard this, the high priest tore his clothes and said Jesus had spoken blasphemy, which means he claimed to be God. The people agreed and said, "He is worthy of death." They spit in his face. They hit him with their fists and teased him, telling him to prophesy about who hit him.
During all of this, Peter was in the courtyard watching from a distance, when a servant girl said he knew Jesus. He denied it, saying, "I do not know the man." Outside the courtyard, another girl said the same thing, and again he said, "I do not know the man." Other people claimed Peter was one of Jesus' disciples, and for the third time he said, "I do not know the man." Just then, a rooster crowed, and Peter remembered Jesus had predicted this exact thing would happen, and he wept.
The chief priests and elders bound Jesus and took him to Pilate the governor. Judas saw these things and felt guilty for betraying Jesus. He returned the 30 pieces of silver he was given for betraying Jesus, then went away and took his own life. And that's where we left off last time. Now it's time to find out what happened next.
Jesus stood before Pilate the governor, who asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus replied, "You have said so." Pilate asked him, "Don't you hear the testimony they are bringing against you?" But Jesus didn't reply at all to any of the charges, which amazed Pilate.
Now, there was a governor's custom at the festival to release a prisoner chosen by the crowd. At that time, they had a well-known prisoner named Barabbas. So, when the crowd gathered, Pilate asked them, "Which one do you want me to release to you, Barabbas or Jesus, who is called the Messiah?" Pilate knew that it was out of self-interest that they had handed Jesus over to them, which means he knew that the people wanted Jesus killed for their own good and not because he had really committed any crime. While Pilate was sitting on the judge's seat, his wife sent him this message: "Don't have anything to do with that innocent man, for I have suffered a great deal today in a dream because of him." Let's pause right there for today's word of the day.
Hello kids, Eugene here with another word of the day. Today's word is innocent. Innocent means you didn't do anything wrong. Innocent.
So Pilate's wife had just sent him a message telling him not to have anything to do with Jesus because he was innocent and she'd been dreaming about this. But the chief priests and elders persuaded the crowd to ask for Barabbas to be released and Jesus executed. "Which of the two do you want me to release to you?" asked the governor. "Barabbas," they answered. "What shall I do then with Jesus, who is called the Messiah?" Pilate asked. They all answered, "Crucify him." But Pilate objected. "Why? What crime has he committed?" The crowd just shouted all the louder, "Crucify him!" When Pilate saw that he was getting nowhere, but that instead an uproar was starting, he took water and washed his hands in front of the crowd and said to them, "I am innocent of this man's blood. It's your responsibility." Pilate washed his hands as a way to say that he didn't want to be considered responsible for murdering an innocent person, but he also didn't want a big uproar among the people that could turn against him. So when the crowd answered, "His blood is on us and on our children," he released Barabbas to them, but had Jesus flogged and handed him over to be crucified. A flogging was a beating that was very extreme and used a weapon to hurt the person as much as possible. This was a very long and painful experience for Jesus.
Then the governor's soldiers took Jesus into the praetorium and gathered all the rest of the soldiers around him. A praetorium was the large tent for a general of the army. All the soldiers around Jesus stripped his clothes off him and put a scarlet robe on him. Scarlet is a bright red color. Then they twisted together a crown made from thorns and set it on his head. They put a staff in his right hand and knelt in front of him and mocked him, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews!" All of this was just to make fun of him and tease him in the most cruel way possible. They spit on him, and they took the staff they'd just given him and hit him on the head with it over and over. After they mocked him, they took off the robe and put his own clothes back on him. Then they led him away to crucify him. And that's where our story ends for today. It's time for the verse to remember.
Today's verse is Matthew 27:22a. What shall I do then with Jesus who is called the Messiah? Matthew 27:22a.
You know, Jamie, I'm sure a lot of us have experienced being teased or being bullied by people, but as we see here in the story, the way they teased Jesus, it was different. It was something that I'm certain's never happened to any of us. They were treating Jesus like a king because they didn't think he was really a king. They didn't think he was worthy to be a king, or that he was smart enough, or that he was royal. But Jesus actually is king. Jesus is Christ. Jesus is God. And so they were mocking him for something that's actually true about who he is. And so as we read through those verses, I know that really stood out to me.
Yeah, that's true. And as I get older and the more I read through these same passages over and over throughout my life, it just impacts me more and more. So if you're young right now and reading these things for the first or second or third time, and it's super overwhelming and scary, it's okay. It is sad and it is scary. Talk to someone you trust about it to help you process and understand it, and know that this is something that even grown-ups have a hard time with. So we're going to see what happens next, and I promise at the end of the story, it all turns out for God's good. We can't wait to see you again for another episode of The Word for Kids.